So here we are once again. Decided to scout again today. Came back to an old spot that I was at last winter. And definitely some good activity here. I already spooked a deer. I wasn't sure if it was a buck or a doe, but there is activity here. I found some bedding, some droppings. I mean, you're this far in, you'll see all kinds of stuff. The trick is deciding where you're going to sit based on all of that. So, ideally, you want to be in between where a deer sleeps and eats or drinks, or a combination of all three. You can also improve your chances by sitting in a pass, like a mountain pass or a small valley or ravine, because the deer will naturally flock to those areas to traverse seemingly safely to other areas. Well, there's some tracks right there. You can see how it ran down the hill here. But yeah, pretty good scouting activity here today. In my last video, I expressed how I didn't really feel the same joy that I did out here, and you know, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it just takes a little bit to get back into the mindset to wash away the old, bring in the new. Because I felt really good about that yesterday, and so much so that, I'll come back out again. Why not? I'm going to sit down on this stump here for a second. Oh, never mind. Looks like something else beat me to it. Anyway, right now I am about a mile away from where I started, and I'll probably do about 3 more miles. And that may encompass the entirety of this video, because I feel like I have a good bit to say, and I might just come up with other stuff along the way. So the first thing I want to talk about is why I will never go to therapy. Lately, this has been a topic of contention with my best friend, who believes that I should go to therapy, and he sincerely, believes that it will help me, and I know he has all the best of intentions in suggesting it. I have no doubt of his intention and his, and that's all well and good. However, I told him, like, straight up, I don't think there's anything a therapist could do for me or tell me that I couldn't do or tell to myself. And he responded in kind that a therapist, it's not really about what they say, and which I somewhat disagree with. Like, what else would be the point of talking to somebody unless some discussion would help you from it, right? But aside from that, I guess the idea is that in talking to your therapist, you externalize internal thoughts and feelings, and it helps you to piece things together. And I think to myself, well, can't I just do that on my own? Can't I just speak to myself? Yeah, people would say, oh, you're crazy if you talk to yourself. And maybe, but if it helps to resolve internal conflict, how crazy are you really? It sounds like a pretty good idea to me. And I socialize with people just fine, as well as myself. I don't think it's necessarily a problem. That said, back on the topic. So that's not the only reason I don't want to go to therapy, and we'll get into more of why. Another reason is I reject the premise outright. It's a this is going to take me a while to put right. But I think if I can, it'll be good. So let me try and frame it for you. So someone who goes to therapy, is having an internal conflict, okay? And there are some people who would not be able to handle that on their own. That's granted. Should those people go to a therapist? Maybe. But if you have the ability to introspect and you have the ability to see things about yourself, you're kind of wasting your time at a therapist. And you might actually be hindering yourself as well, because they may be adding thoughts into your mind that otherwise wouldn't have been there, for better or for worse. And they can, throw you for a loop, throw you off of, your path, so to speak. But beyond that, I reject therapy as a system, and I'm a little more hesitant to say this, but psychology as a practice. And this is a tough one because my best friend, is in that field, and he's the kind of guy that goes by the psychoanalytic studies and reads the literature, is very familiar in that area. I am not, but I have, I think, a more intuitive understanding of it, which I will freely admit is probably not a complete picture, but I feel as though my life experience gives me some ground to stand on. The problem with psychoanalytical studies and psychological studies, what have you, and this is a point that I brought up to him one time, that he had trouble defending or coming up with a response to. And my thought was, okay, so these studies are supposedly objective in nature. They come up with measurable traits or measurable things about a person. It's called a measure or an instrument. So a psychologist would develop an instrument to measure certain things about a person. Whether it be a response to a question or I don't know. It could be a number of things. I think facial expression maybe even be one of them. Again, I'm not in that field, but this is just what I know from talking to him. So they base all of these things. Ooh, just one second. Look at that. A little berry. Looks like maybe a little unripened blackberry or something. Anyway, they use these instruments to, and these instruments have to be reviewed by, I believe, a board or another accredited psychologist in the practice, right? So there are some hoops you have to jump through in order to make this happen, no doubt. So the only problem with all this is you can be objective within the realm of whatever instruments you're using or whatever you're measuring or whatever you say that you're measuring. But the question will always come back to, what is normal? What is normal human behavior according to a psychologist? This is, I believe, the most important question that ought to be asked to any psychologist. Because however they answer will tell you not only about them, but more likely the broader system. You see, modern therapy and psychology is a modern practice, but we've, for the past thousands of years, have not given it that name. We've kind of indirectly used it, but the modern practice is its purpose is to almost make you a seamless, how do I put this? I was on a roll too. Don't worry, we'll get back to it. So, therapists, whenever somebody goes in to see a therapist, the end goal, and this is just from my understanding and from what I've seen and heard from a good bit of people, the end goal is to, sure, they'll ask you to confront traumas and whatnot, but the end goal is to make you get back in line, really, and make you feel good about it. Normal is normal, which is whatever the current feeling of normal is. There really isn't an objective normal. It's constantly changing. So there is no solid ground for psychologists to stand on when it comes to what they are comparing your current condition to. So let's take an example here, a thought experiment. So what if everybody in the world had what we call schizophrenia? Now, this is quite an extreme thought experiment, and the world will look very different if this were the case. But suffice to say, let's say everybody in the world had schizophrenia. Well, let's say also that, somehow there was the some kind of study of psychology. Well, what is considered normal would be schizophrenic people. It wouldn't be what we consider normal today. And who knows? There could have been points in history where we had a collective mental illness, or what would have been called a mental illness today. So this is the problem with psychology. It only seeks to keep order and predictability within any given system. It does not go any further than that. So if you are someone who thinks deeply or is troubled by big questions, therapy isn't going to help you, for that simple fact. I'm not calling myself an Einstein or some kind of genius, right? But I'm just of the temperament where psychology is useless. I see past what they try to do. I am able to see past methods and means. For better or for worse. Again, not bragging. Sometimes I wish I didn't have that ability, but I do, so. So yeah, that's kind of my view on therapy and psychology. I don't have much more to say than that, because that basically sums up everything that I think about it. Again, as always, if there's if you want me to get more into it, the best thing to do is to ask me a question on it, and that'll get me thinking. But that's the topic of therapy. So what else? Well, I was talking to my brother today about, life, and we talk about philosophical stuff as well, which I'm grateful for. Grateful that he engages with it. But we were discussing what is often called, and I believe Nietzsche referred to this as such, the Apollonian and the Dionysian spirit. And, we were kind of talking about how it related to recent happenings. I won't really get into those recent happenings because, well, maybe I will, just to bring it full circle, but anyway, I'm gonna take a seat here, so, yeah, so the Apollonian spirit, just to bring everything together, is, loosely speaking, the temperament that seeks to elevate and evolve humanity, bring us out of the animalistic uh, darkness that has shrouded us for God knows how long. And then the Dionysian spirit, if you're not familiar, is just the opposite, where we embrace our animalistic urges and regress to such. Um, and I think my brother is someone who is very much Apollonian. Uh, he has a hard time with the acceptance of some of the more animalistic urges of man, and that's probably just because he's so damn good at controlling his own. Um, but I think the answer, or the measured approach, is somewhere in the middle. Um, well, for one, if we forget about our animalistic urges or pretend like they don't exist, keep them packed away, we are setting ourselves up for future calamities. Repressed needs are, they manifest later as violence and mania. And we would do well to remember that we're just animals. Well, we're not just animals. That's where the Apollonian spirit comes in. Because we are self-regulating animals. We are able to fucking fly. Okay. We are able to regulate ourselves and um, realize that certain urges must be overwritten to accomplish other things. And that, that there's evidence of this all through history. I mean, civilization itself is evidence of this. And no other animal has come even close. Um, but I think the reason we were talking about this is we are entering now a critical point in our development where uh, we're splitting off. And maybe this has been happening for a longer time than I'm thinking of. Maybe this is just a constant through humanity. But right now we're at a crossroads where we have a lot of people who seem to want to reject either one. Um, and I see very little in between. Uh, like you have these women who, if you've heard of the recent murder case of this, I forget her name, but the lady who murdered her 3 children, you have such an outcry and such a support for this base animalistic behavior. Um, no remorse, no sympathy for the children. Seemingly, all the sympathy given to the mother. Uh, this is totally backwards. But it's revealed something. Let's see. This is the good thing about the recent news is there's a segment of women who have revealed themselves as this extreme Dionysian cult, like almost, and they have shown their hand, so to speak. And there's a sizable, from what we've seen, and how much money was given to this lady who murdered her children. We see that there is a sizable amount of support for this attitude and this way of thinking. It's surreal because for a while now we've been under the illusion of polite society, and all of the ugliness was kept, for the most part, behind closed doors. But I think more and more as the years go on, we see people more brazenly coming out with this animalistic way of thinking. Now, I think the animalistic side isn't all bad. Okay, there are instincts that we have as humans that are totally necessary for our survival. And if we would reject those, we wouldn't last very long. Instinct to protect family and kin is very, I would say, ingrained in us. At least on the part of the male. But then there's the argument that this all happened due to modern medicine and antidepressants, which, in a way, I don't contest. But the point still stands. You have all of these women who are still forgiving this brazen act of murder. So, the more I talk about it, the more complicated it gets. You see the web forming, and just how many angles there are to come at this. But the Apollonian always seeks to overcome the urge, where the Dionysian embraces it. Well, in this case, this lady embraced it, and so did all of the people who choose to support her. And it will be very interesting to see if they try to put the blame onto the husband. I think it would be more appropriate if they direct the blame anywhere at all, to be on the system. I don't think that's going to happen, though, because the SSRI antidepressant system, birth control system, must continue for the plans of our great leaders to come to fruition. It can't happen any other way. This has been planned and laid out long before I was born, and probably many of you listening were born. And it will play out as such. So don't expect any change to come from this. The outrage and the moral panic that's happening as a result of this is only to rouse and inflame passions and make people. That's why I don't give too much thought to the news anymore. Just it's all it does is inflames the emotions, and there's nothing you can do about it. And well, that's where it ends. So you're just left with a feeling of stress and helplessness. So, yeah, but that's kind of why we started talking about the Apollonian versus the Dionysian spirit. I think a lot of things can be broken down to that. That's a very fundamental way of looking at human nature, and both exist in the world very much so. Here's some more tracks. But I have trouble tying that discussion up, though, just because of how many variables there are. But at the end of the day, again, she chose to act on her animal instincts. And then some would question whether or not it's a choice at all. And I think I still believe it is a choice. A choice dependent on how much agency the person has. And that varies actually from person to person. We don't all have the same horsepower, so to speak. Look at this. Tiny little blackberry. That is good to eat right there. Let me just test it real quick. Oh yeah. That's a blackberry. Good one too. Very nice. There's actually a ton of them, but they're just most of them are still unripened. Yeah, all that little undergrowth there is that's all blackberry. Cool. Oh, there's another one. Barely worth picking at, but it's there. Yeah, I think I wasn't able to tie up the discussion with the murder, the triple murder, but I think I can tie up the broader discussion about the Dionysian versus the Apollonian. I know I've said that like 50 times already, but I think in order to grow and evolve, you can't go with one or the other. You have to, even in your personal life, I guess maybe even especially, embrace both. Recognize your animalistic nature, appease it where necessary, preferably not at the expense of others, which is where your Apollonian or, Christianity would call it different things, but when we discuss it in these terms, we're getting to the root of what these are. We're talking about Apollo and Dionysus, who, in mythology were, Apollo, he's like of the sun, the sun shining down, and then Bacchus is wine and dining, and so to say sin versus grace or whatever, that isn't really descriptive. It's not really telling you what it is, really. It stigmatizes the behavior, whereas talking about it from the Hellenistic speech, or the Hellenistic pantheon, you're speaking about it as a matter of factly. Whenever you would have, there's a bit of a bog here, so I got to be careful. All right, we're good. So, whenever you have, whenever you use this terminology, you're not ascribing any morality to it. You're saying, okay, this is our animal nature. This is just how it is. And here's our human, godly, upward and forward way of thinking. And that's just how it is. Looking at the world this way allows you to make decisions without stifling yourself on the traps of morality and getting caught up in moral quandaries. That's not to say that we should disregard morality, but I think what we consider morality ought to be reconsidered. I think what I'm saying has kind of already been said by Nietzsche and maybe some others, but, well, definitely Nietzsche. I know for a fact that Nietzsche spoke about this. But we're at a point in history where we have to come up with our own systems. You know, we're at a crossroads, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where it's up to us. When all the old systems inevitably wither under their own weight, something will have to come in to fill that, and we must be ready. We can't just throw every idea out and expect that returning to the animalistic mean will save us either. So we have many important decisions to make going forward collectively. And we'll all be faced with decisions in our lives that will shift this towards one way or another. And that's really all we can do on an individual level. Unless, of course, some of you come into some kind of political power or have some sway in local or state or even national government. But even then, the greatest ideas sometimes come from the tiniest of mouths, and all it takes is a gust of wind to carry it across the world. The problem now is that there are so many different currents of wind carrying all manner of messages that so many just get lost in the absolute chaos of it all. There are so many people talking, and so many people that can now be heard more than ever before, that some of the greatest ideas might never be fully considered, just because of the sheer volume of philosophers that we have nowadays. Alright. I may need to stop and check my GPS here, because I should have, by this point, come to a crossroads. Ooh. I might be getting rained on here, folks. This might be an interesting one. Glad I wore my wet boots for this. Anyway. Yeah. Food for thought, you know. I'm just getting my thoughts out there. You know, I actually want to talk about another thing here. So I've been in the, what you would call, black pill sphere circles lately. And I've listened to a lot of guys in there and spoken with some of them. And, oh shit. Went right into a spider web. Alright, anyway. These guys, so the reason I talk to these guys and hear them out is they're at the forefront of a large, or one of the largest movements of men, I believe, in our time. They speak for what millions of men probably feel. That said, I think a lot of them get caught up in the you know what? No, a lot of them are just simply stuck in shitty positions in life. And they have no way out. And so they ascribe their issues rightly onto a broken and corrupt system. The only problem, though, is complaining about it hasn't really seemed to push things any further. And maybe I'm wrong, though. You know, maybe as their voices get louder and as more voices join in the chorus, will be collectively heard, and there will be change. But either way, these men who have been seemingly outcast by society for their thoughts or actions, they're not going away anytime soon. And I think we should listen to them. I would almost consider myself as one of them, but there would be many who would scoff at that idea, and that's fine. I don't really care to be considered as a black pillar or whatever, because I'm not. But I can relate with much of what they say, and I really wouldn't consider any of them my enemies. I think a lot of them have a healthy view of the world, and they're just in a sick world, and there's no other way for them to go. Particularly speaking about the black pillars who talk about the woman issue, I think they have the right idea. I think they're on point. Women today are seemingly just any bad female behavior today is just overlooked, as seen in the current murder trial that's going on. But just women's behavior in general has just been, we let too much go. We're at a point where how do I put this? So the very fact that we treat women differently for the same crimes or same social sins that are committed by men, we forgive them because we aren't equal. People miss this, you know. Uh, it's a self-defeating system. You know, it's pointed out constantly by itself. You have women doing all this awful shit, and it's forgiven. Men doing the same thing, uh, they're they're thrown away, they're castigated and cast down. I mean, how long can this go on, really? Um, and it's not popular to speak this way either. It's not popular with the ladies. Ladies, if you're listening, I I know there are some women who listen to me, but you can't really deny this if you're, really thinking about it. I mean, look at the news, And that's not to say that all women do this. I'm not as extreme as many of my peers on this topic, but it seems to be the way the wind is blowing these days, especially in the West. So, just keep that in mind whenever you watch the news. Keep an eye on that. But yeah, I sympathize with the black pillars. I do. They have the right idea. I think a lot of them need direction and guidance, because right now it's not being given to them by the powers that be. It's not there. There's no direction. There's nothing. It's just a free-for-all, a moral free-for-all, and yeah, essentially survival of the fittest. Now, our illustrious masters probably have it in their heads that, oh, well, these black pillar types, well, they'll be gone in a few generations, and from then on, we'll have the master race, and we can continue our project as such. I don't know if it's going to pan out that smoothly. That would require the social contract to remain in place. And I question whether that will happen. I strongly question that. I think we are going to see... we are going to see tumultuous times. And you know what? I just realized where I am. I didn't even need to look at my GPS, folks. I know exactly where I am. I recognize this stream. Huh. I did a loop. Lucky me. Sometimes you just gotta follow a trail and you can find your way out. Just don't panic. Okay, so that means we have to walk this way. And then we take a right. There should be a trail that takes us out to the main road. And hopefully I get there before it rains. But I don't mind getting a little wet. Okay, so this should be the trail right here. You see it? Yep. Okay, so we'll walk out of here. So yeah, some days I regret finding the black pill space. Although I think someone of my temperament, it was an inevitability. It's one of the main topics of contention. It's becoming more out in the open. I certainly don't want to latch onto it, but I think it's something to keep an eye on, and I think it's important that you're aware of it. But yeah, it's had a really big emotional impact on me because, you know, a lot of these guys are way ahead of me. Like, I'll freely admit it. They're And it's also mainly because of their experience and where they're at in their lives. They're on the front lines of the decline, a lot of these guys, and they see things that I don't see every day, things that I'm blind to, just because of where I am. But yeah, it's tough to even listen to some of the things these guys have to experience, and I can only imagine what it's like being in their shoes. I do empathize with them, and I've seen a lot of their misfortunes and struggles, and it's made me kind of mentally prepare myself in ways. Ooh, there's a spider on me. Ooh, get off. Ooh. Ooh. He was just hanging out on my finger. But yeah, I think the years to come will be very, very interesting, to say the least. We're entering a period of certain decline, in more ways than one. Population, economics. When you have a system, and I said this before already, but when you have a system built on population growth and throwing more people into the furnace, then you know, once that replacement rate drops below 2, you got problems. And that's where we're at right now. And we're all, well, not all of us, but we're pitifully aware of our position. And it's all about what do we do next, right? Speaking for myself, well, I'm going to foster a group of family and friends who will consider me as such, and try to do as best as I can locally, and hopefully try to build a community, build something, you know, just anything to entrench myself and my people that I love from the what comes our way. It's not going to be easy, and I think it will take certain many delusional people. Delusion isn't always a bad thing. It can actually arouse one to action, but it's going to take a lot of effort to see it through this. I hope, you know, my goal is to keep the spirit of growth in this world, the spirit of adventure and like, I don't want to see future generations deprived of those things. And I feel as though that's happening more and more as we go. Anyway, we made it to the road, as you could see. Didn't have to use my GPS at all. which I'm very happy about. And it looks like, well, oh, looks like the storm's rolling in, so good timing, I'd say. I do still have to walk a ways, but at least I'm out of the woods. So we'll leave it there. I wasn't as satisfied with this talk. I wasn't able to complete my thoughts as much, but we got it, and I think that's good. I hope some of you take something from it. I know it's cliche, but don't give up. This world is all we have. The people around us is all we have. At a certain point, there is no guidance from your betters, so take what you have and do the best you can with it. That's all I really have to say. So as the storm clouds roll in, I bid you all farewell. Have a good day. Peace out.